Hi, everybody. Uh, Welcome to the new version of Disassembly Required. Just for probably next couple weeks, depending on how long this lasts, the whole coronavirus. This is how I'm going to be doing episodes from now on, mostly just because I don't have access to my regular equipment. So, this is my room. Going to be seeing a lot of this as the background. Maybe the study room downstairs, maybe even my living room. Who knows? And that's a big issue right now. A lot of people are feeling worried because they don't know enough about the coronavirus. Because it's a very scary thing for a lot of people, especially people who, you know, especially medical workers, because they have to live with it and see it every day. But also people with underlying conditions, older people. I mean, it's the scariest for them because they have to worry every time they have to go outside. Now, other random thing, I'm standing because my chair sucks. So this might be shorter than normal. But I just wanted to give a quick breakdown of some things to know, some things you can do while you're stuck inside. If you're not inside, stay inside, please. Just making it worse for everyone else. If you're in Florida and you really like church, because Florida said that church is considered an essential business and can stay open, don't go to church. That is literally the worst place you can go right now, is to sit in a room with like 50 to 100 people and like you're all sitting together on pews and shit. Like, it's not a good place. If you can go anywhere where you are essentially obligated to be less than 6 feet apart from somebody, don't go. Just don't. But, so yeah. So first off, let's talk about the virus itself. There's lots of things that people don't know. There's lots of information spreading around that isn't necessarily harmful, but it's not useful. So, starting off first, there's lots of people saying that if you drink hot water constantly, or if you just keep drinking water, that if the virus is in your throat and isn't like in your lungs yet, that if you drink water, it will just go down and your stomach acid will kill it. That's not how viruses work. That's not how cells work, really, at all. If it was as easy as that, then I think a lot more people would have been drinking water. But nonetheless, that's not something that really works. What you really have to make sure you do, obviously, is wash your hands, use gloves if you have them, um, like when you go out in public. And when you go out in public and you use gloves, when you come back home, if you're out in public, you're using, your car, uh, your phone, bags, whatever you're using, you have to make sure that when you get home, you disinfect those things before you touch them with your open hands, with your free hands, because if those things do have something on it, this is also just regardless. This is just proper glove etiquette. If those things do have something on them, and you take off your gloves and then just touch them anyway, then what's the use of using gloves? Especially your phone. A lot of people don't wash their phone. I mean, you can't really wash it, but you can at least wipe it down with a Clorox wipe. That's what I do, and that works. And really, you don't. Here's the second thing. It's very important to remember. The quarantine and stay-at-home order are two different things. Stay-at-home order is essentially to help flatten the curve, just a broad limit on going outside. This is not martial law. This is not the government trying to pretend, or this is not the government like pretending that there's a virus or whatever, using the virus to try to enforce martial law. Because honestly, have you seen some of these people? who run the government, a lot of them couldn't spell strategy, let alone make one. But the quarantine is different because when you're in with the stay-at-home order, it's essentially don't go outside unless you need to. That means if you need to go get groceries, if you need to go get food, go get food. That doesn't mean if you need to go on a hike, to go to church, to go to the salon, whatever. That's not what that means. It means stay at home and don't go outside unless you need to. Quarantine is different because that means that you suspect that you have the virus. And that's what you should quote unquote stock up for. And when I say stock up, I don't mean stock up like you're preparing to be alone for 30 years in a bunker. I mean stock up for like 2 weeks. 2 weeks of food. That's it. That's what the CDC recommends, is that for the emergency situation in which you do suspect that you have the coronavirus, quarantine yourself for 14 days. And in those 14 days, of course, don't come into contact with other people. That's what quarantine means. But since you can't go outside during quarantine, that's why you need the food. That's why you need to stock up. That's sort of the important part. And like if you buy groceries normally, like me personally, I buy groceries for 2 weeks every time I buy groceries. Like I buy enough food to get me through about 2, maybe 2.5 weeks. You should be fine. There's no reason that you should feel inclined to buy more than you need. And that's the important part, is need. If you are in an area in which you can help people who are in need, or perhaps maybe you have, some charities you can donate to currently, or anything like that, that's definitely something you can do. Even right now, just promoting charities is a great thing to do, because maybe you don't have money because you got fired because of the coronavirus. I know Hobby Lobby fired all of their employees, saying that, quote, it's now in God's hands. This is after they refused to close their stores because the owner of the Hobby Lobby, his wife, had a vision from God saying that, the coronavirus was not going to, be as bad as it is. Because people are weird. Hobby Lobby's a weird company anyway, so there's that. That might be a topic for another day. Other thing that's really important to remember is that when you come home, if you're using a mask, don't use it more than once. That's kind of the point of the mask. You're supposed to use it once for however long you need it, and then you put it away. Because if you reuse your mask and say you reuse your mask and maybe you do somehow manage to walk into, because it is said that the coronavirus can linger for about an hour just in the open air. They're not entirely sure about the complete science of it because they haven't been able to study it, because with the pandemic, it's not necessarily the main priority. Mainly right now, of course, the priority is finding a cure or a vaccine or an antiviral. All these different things are a bigger priority than finding out exactly how long coronavirus stays in the air. But say, for instance, that you're in the presence of somebody and they cough, they have the coronavirus, and it's on the outside of your mask. That's the important part of having a mask. It's supposed to filter out viruses and bacteria, whatever. If you reuse your mask, that starts to break down. So don't reuse a mask if you have one. If you make a cloth mask, then make sure you're following proper regulations and guidelines regarding those, because they are different than a regular mask. So you have to make sure that you're following those guidelines, and that when you do reuse it, that you wash it properly. And there are guidelines for that, I believe, as well. I could be wrong. but there's definitely places you can look to find that information. And that's the important part right now, is that right now, if you really take the time to look, and a lot of you do have the time right now because of the stay-at-home orders across a lot of states. I currently live in Arizona. Our governor is kind of, I don't want to say shithead, but he's not the smartest knife in the crayon box, whatever the hell you want to say. And he just recently ordered a stay-at-home order. The governor of another state recently had a stay-at-home order because he just realized, despite the fact that it's been a couple months, he just realized that people who don't show symptoms can also spread the coronavirus. You know, people who are supposed to be educated about this stuff the most, I guess, slips out of their heads too. But if you take the time, really, you can find all the information you need. Especially right now, I know it's very easy to get worked up and to get worried and to get scared, but the most important thing to do is stay calm, stay at home, and of course, like, listen to the CDC. Which also means you should vaccinate your kids. I don't think you could do that right now just because of the coronavirus, and I don't think that going to the doctor right now is the greatest thing in the world, just because they're probably overflooded with people trying to see if they have the coronavirus, despite the fact that doctors' offices just probably don't have tests. Hospitals have tests because they can test people en masse easier. Excuse me. Oh, what eight's just trying to come back up. Sorry. Yes, so take the time to do your own research, look through everything. There's tons of websites you can find. And I know that a lot of people may not completely trust the news, but if you really, do some cross-checking, which isn't hard, but the current person who's been at the sort of the forefront of this, Dr. Anthony Fauci, you can find tons of interviews with him online. A lot of people have been interviewing him, and he has a lot of information because he knows the most about this currently and what you should and shouldn't do. So if you have any questions about, more technical stuff, definitely try to check out those interviews because he definitely knows what he's talking about. I watched the other day the interview he did with Trevor Noah on The Daily Show because they're still doing The Daily Show. I think it's really rad that they're doing it all from home, especially because it's one of those time periods where the news is really important. Because especially with certain news channels, ones that begin with F and end with Ox, they might not be as inclined to completely report on things. So you have to really make sure that when you are doing research, you're cross-checking it properly, which really doesn't take long. It sounds like it takes a lot of effort, but really it's like, oh, I heard this. And then you go and you check the source on it. If the source is from a credible source, which you can find out how to find if something's credible. It's really easy. You can find YouTube videos on it. It's super quick. Maybe takes you 5 minutes. I mean, the other day I heard about the cloth masks thing, and I thought that doesn't seem like it would work. So I Googled it, I looked it up, and I found that, this actually can work, but it's more of an emergency situation thing. Hopefully we won't need to worry about those for very long because the Defense Protection Act has been enacted or called upon, or whatever the term is, which means that American companies now are going to be producing medical supplies that hospitals need, which is really important, obviously, because one, you have an extraordinary amount of people who may have the coronavirus but don't know it. So they might not know until they get really sick. And that's kind of the sort of the worrying part for a lot of people, is they see the numbers going up. They see more coronavirus cases. And there might be more new cases but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're new infections. Those people could have had the coronavirus for like up to like a couple weeks, not a couple weeks, I think it's like you can be asymptomatic for I think it's 10 days, and then you start showing symptoms. But you can be asymptomatic for that amount of time, and then you get sick. You might not think that whatever you have is the coronavirus, so you might not go get tested. And even if you do get tested, they might be like, oh, we don't have enough tests. So those people who might have the coronavirus who are going through those situations, when they eventually do get tests, that's why the numbers spike. The numbers spike not because more people are getting it, they're spiking because more testing is being done. And more people are being able to be tested, which means that we are more informed about how many cases there are, which can be scary, of course, just seeing that number grow up. I saw the other day, I think it was yesterday, the day before, that globally the number had reached, I think it was over 1 million, which is crazy. But also the population of the world is 7 billion. It might be 8 billion now. I haven't checked recently, but I remember growing up they said 7 billion, so it's probably around 7-8 billion. So 1 million isn't a lot, but the scariest part about the coronavirus is that it spreads very quickly, and the spread of it can't be stopped really by, just conventional staying away from people, because it's really, really hard, I guess, to get people to like just listen to like the CDC. I guess it's just really hard to get people to listen to doctors in general. I guess we kind of knew that with the whole anti-vax thing and people putting bleach in their eyes or in their pets or in their kids. People are fucking crazy. But that's one of the main, the two things that are currently impeding, or not necessarily impeding, but the two things that are currently working against the group effort to flatten the curve are those two things that I just mentioned. People not listening to doctors, and people generally not being informed enough to care. Like, I know a lot of people probably saw, I think it was last week or the week before, that there were still a shit ton of people going on spring break. Like, and even when we knew that this was a serious issue, people were still going on spring break and people were still not taking it seriously, despite the fact that there have been hundreds of, I think at this point I don't think there have been hundreds of thousands, but there's definitely been at least like a couple thousand deaths, like at least in the US. I know Italy had a very high death rate. And it's really important to remember that if you can stay home, that means if you do not have a job that is labeled as essential, stay home. And I know that's very difficult for a lot of people, especially if they have a job that's very demanding and isn't willing to let them work from home right now, because they also aren't listening to doctors, or they just don't value you as a worker, employee, human. Last week, I think it was recorded that a record 6.6 million people filed for unemployment, which is absolutely crazy, considering there's a graph you can find, and I'm probably going to post it over on my Twitter. You should follow me on Twitter. The Twitter link is probably going to be in the description of this video. So follow me over there. It's real fun, real nice. But there's a graph you can find, and it shows what the unemployment rate looked like over the past couple of years. And then it shows the massive spike, like just how huge it was. Like even the spike of the 2008 recession was not nearly as big as it was last week, with that many people filing for unemployment. Like, that is crazy, because a lot of companies have just given up on their employees and just fired them. That's it. They're not willing to try to help people work from home. They're not trying to provide benefits. despite the fact that like pretty much all the companies that have done this are big companies. They're companies that can afford to let their workers, their employees, work from home, but they decide not to, and instead to just just fire them all. I mean, it's insane, especially because a lot of states who do have the lockdowns in effect, the stay-at-home orders regarding essential businesses and stuff like that, they aren't paying the people who are working in these essential businesses anymore. They're not paying them more money for working during a pandemic. They're not paying them more money like because they're at risk by just working normally. Like if you work in a dangerous situation, I'm pretty sure you're legally required to be paid like more because it's a dangerous place to work. It's called hazard pay. Like it's crazy to see that there's just a huge disregard through a lot of companies and a lot of states for not paying these people as much as they need to be paid. I think one state declared that grocery store workers were so vital that they were required by law to have free childcare because of this current situation. There's also just tons of crazy things going on with a lot of people who do work in those essential companies in those essential businesses. They also are quitting because they're being harassed at work by people who like are going crazy over this pandemic. They're not being paid enough to work under the current conditions, and like that's completely fair. I mean, if you're not being paid enough given this current situation, like I can totally understand why someone would want to quit. But it's also important to remember that when you do go out to the store, when you do go get groceries, if once the Instacart strike is over and their demands are met, which I'm fairly sure they will be, if you do get something delivered, if you get your groceries delivered, be nice to people. It's not hard to do, but like tip if you can, as much as you can. I try every time that I get something delivered to tip at least $5. I know it's not a lot, but I don't have a lot of money just in general. But when I can tip, I usually give like $10, maybe $20. Like if I have a good chunk of money that I can spend, because I know that these people, and it's important to remember that these people are also on the front line. I mean, if you're sick, you might be more likely to want your groceries delivered, to want food delivered. And it's great that that a lot of companies and a lot of places that do deliver things are implementing no contact orders. So when you order, you can have the option to have them just drop it off at your door. They drop it off at your door, they take a picture, they send it to you, and like, hey, your groceries are there, pick them up, I guess, whenever. I have a bit of a harder problem with that just because I live in a dorm situation and it's a gated sort of thing. So like there's the individual houses, but then there's a gate. So I can't just have somebody leave it at the gate because then people will just think it's free food and they'll steal it. Despite the fact that there's a decent amount of portion of students who are still on campus who come from rich families who totally don't need to steal people's food, but they do anyway, which is wonderful if you couldn't tell from my biting sarcasm. So that's it for just general information about the coronavirus. I do want to say, though, just very shortly, that I think it's important to, one, stay updated, of course, but two, think of things that you can do while you're home. It's very easy to get bored, especially I know a lot of people like being outside, but really it's important to remember that if you can stay home, then stay home. Staying home isn't as optional as you think it is. I was talking to some friends and I asked them, oh, what do you think I should talk about? Like, what activities do you think I should encourage people to try at home or try during these times? And they said, oh, what about hiking? And I was speechless because you're not supposed to go outside. That's the point. Yeah, sure, you can go on the mountain, but like if 50 people go on the mountain, then like that's still 50 people who are on the same hiking trail. Like, you're bound at that point to like come into contact with people, and it's not a good thing. You can exercise at home. You can, if you like going, if you like nature, maybe try painting. Maybe you don't have paint. At least you probably have a pencil at home. You can maybe try getting back into drawing. Whatever. Like, there's so many things you can do at home. Watch YouTube. There's tons of YouTube videos right now because a lot of creators on the platform work from home. Excuse me, my voice just cracked because I had a bubble in my throat. But a lot of creators work from home. So there's a lot of content being posted on YouTube right now. There's tons of things. You can watch people paint. You can watch people draw, dance, sing. There's so much you can do. Videos, like, not videos, what am I talking about? Movies. You can watch movies. There's tons of new movies coming out. Netflix obviously is shoving a bunch of movies on their platform right now because companies like Netflix, Hulu, a little bit, Amazon Prime, not that much, Disney Plus, they're surging right now because people are home and people are watching their content. Especially companies like Netflix who have huge libraries. There's so many movies on Netflix. There's so many shows on Netflix. All of Dexter is on Netflix. Should you watch it? No. It's terrible, but you could. Lost is on Netflix, which is a really good old show. Well, I say old, it's older. It was popular when I was a kid, but I didn't watch it because my parents were like, you can't watch that. It's too adult for you. And also I was like, that sounds scary. I was a scared child. If you like horror movies, Amazon Prime has tons of them. Hulu also has a huge selection of Blumhouse films, which are really cheap and usually really bad, but they're really fun to watch. So if you can stay home, stay home. If you can't stay home, then make sure you stay safe. I'm going to be posting more videos. Hopefully I'm going to be able to post one a week. Might be a little bit of a delay on that. Like, might be one every 10 days or whatever. But I'll see y'all guys later.